Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Dog Eared Thoughts. I'm Michael, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm going to do something a little different today. This episode is going to be really focused on a library haul or book haul although this one happens to be from the library that I've done recently. Um, Absolutely have to recommend and will continue to support my local library. I use it weekly or close to it for various things from books to events that are going on there, for just a myriad of opportunities. The one that I have down there has a nice 3D printer and even a room. If I were up for starting a podcast, that one actually would be a place to go to. It's really all of the libraries are resources that we should all be using. They have movies there. Obviously, you can go online and get audiobooks and ebooks, movies through and things like that. So, absolutely huge plug for local libraries. Please go ahead and jump into that. Um, I will say, usually I get quite a few books, like 4 or 5 books from my library. This time I only got 3, but I think I've started this year, at least so far, to be the year of my big book binge, for to use some alliteration there. I had Dr. Zhivago earlier. I had King Sorrow this month, and now I've picked up 2 books that are definitely big books, and I'm excited to dig into them and read them. But they'll take some time, which thankfully I have at least 1 or 2 renewals in case I don't get to them before I have to return them. So I'm really looking forward to getting into that. The first book, absolute classic. It's a book that I think is, for those who've read the book, probably is on their top 5, definitely in their top 10. Some would even put it higher in all books that they've read. I read this a long, long time ago when I was much younger. And I've watched some reviewers talk about it for reading it for the first time or rereading it, and it just really dug in to me that I want to reread this book, and so it is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. Absolutely a classic. For those of you who may not be familiar, it follows the tale of Edmond Dante, who is falsely accused and imprisoned during right around the time of the restoration of the monarchy after Napoleon in France, and he then seeks revenge or to be righted for the wrongs that were done to him by the people who did them, and that follows the book. This particular version is translated by Peter Washington, and it is, I will say I am not an expert in translations, and I know there are a lot of opinions on whose whose are better than others and things like that. I find this, so far I'm only about 100 pages in, but the translation flows well. It is definitely, I think a lot of that also goes into Dumas' writing in general. If you think of the Three Musketeers and those books, those flow and go very well and don't seem to slog too much at all. And I'm seeing this immediately from this book. In fact, quite frankly, I had forgotten how early in the book Dante's arrest and imprisonment begins. And so it is exciting, and I'm really looking forward to digging into this. Absolutely want to hear kind of everyone's thoughts on and opinions on the Count of Monte Cristo. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say really a whole lot bad about it, other than maybe it's long. But beyond that, it is quintessentially one of the best books probably ever written. It's certainly within the last 200 years or more. So you have that. The next one that's out there is, or that I picked up, is Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. This one is a translation by Michael Katz. It is a relatively new translation. that came out not too long ago. Again, I'm not a translation expert, so I won't say whether this is the best one or not the best one. I think I picked it up because it is a slightly newer translation, and sometimes I feel like there's opportunity there to go back into the past and look more on at his what could be the right way to do this. This is also a reread for me in that regard, but I am. But also not a recent reread. It's been years and years since I've even attempted this book, and I believe when I did read it, I felt that I struggled to get through it. And I think everyone has kind of a different opinion about Dostoevsky and his books in general. But for those of you who may not know, this follows Rodion Raskolnikov. I completely murdered that pronunciation. Let me try that again. Raskolnikov. Okay. Anyway, who lives in St. Petersburg, Russia, and he's not doing well. He's broke. He's not all sane. And one of the theories that he posits is that people who have are extraordinary, so Napoleon, as he kind of compares himself to, are above the law, above morality, and can do basically whatever they want because of their exceptional nature. And to prove that to himself and to others, but mostly to himself, he decides to test his theory and commits a murder. And from there, the book follows actually more than one murder, but the book follows not only him committing that murder, but then most assuredly what happens to a person and following a crime of that magnitude, and how do you live with yourself following that, and of course obviously also what is considered justice that follows that as well. So a classic again. I don't know if I'm also, this is the year of classics for me perhaps, but I'm excited to dig into and reread this one. It is truly one of those classics. I'm truly going in with a little bit of a blank slate. I will say, while I remember again, not even less than high level plot points, I think this I'm going to find a lot of new things or things for the first time that I had forgotten. So if anything, that really excites me. The next one is, it's a very brand new book, The Death of Trotsky, or The Death of Trotsky, The True Story of the Plot to Kill Stalin's Greatest Enemy. It is written by Josh Ireland, who's done some books about Churchill and Orwell. This one, I saw that it had come out. In fact, it's brand new within this year. And so for me, this is an opportunity to read a little bit more about Trotsky in general. So it is a story that interests me. From the jacket, it is the story of a man named Jacques Mornad, which is not his real name, but who met Leon Trotsky and when he was exiled and living in Mexico City, and kills him. And so the preface of this book is kind of following all three storylines, which is one, Trotsky and what happens to him following his exile from the Soviet Union. It's the man who kills him, whose real name is Ramon Mercader, and how he goes from being a Spanish kind of aristocrat, but also someone who is caught up in the Spanish Civil War, and then turns more into a very following and really digging in and becoming a Soviet agent from that perspective, and how he goes to Mexico to track down and kill Trotsky, and then finally Stalin himself, and how he truly regrets letting Trotsky live, and Trotsky becomes kind of this symbol for all that is, I guess, wrong, and Stalin's kind of obsession to rid himself of who he deems as his greatest enemy, and someone who could bring him down. So excited to read this. I've also started this mostly because it's a new book. I have to return it sooner and don't get as many renewals on this one. So I'm reading Death of Trotsky and Count of Monte Cristo in tandem. Some of morning books and evening books, and wherever I can fit it in between, to try to get through this. But it's an extraordinary period of time. Cold War, leading into World War II, but also all the things that Stalin did to his enemies and people he perceived as enemies, even if they weren't, and everybody, in terms of purging and exiling and murdering, but also the forced modernization of the Soviet Union from where they started with in the 1920s to where they ended up with just in World War II and beyond, along with the reality of how Trotsky lost his Soviet citizenship, and countries wouldn't take him in as they saw him as a dissident, and did not want to necessarily create a larger international incident with such a power that is the Soviet Union, especially as Stalin consolidated power, and all of that. So it's absolutely interesting. I'm looking forward to it. It's not as thick as my other books, so I think this would be a good primer. And even so much what I've read so far is this would be a good primer if you're not familiar with Trotsky or how he died, or even just the time period within that. I think this would give you a good starting point and allow you to dig deeper beyond that. So that is my plan for the next few weeks, maybe even month. We'll see how that goes as we are into April, and I can't believe we're here, April 2026. So we'll definitely enjoy these, and we'll see what else moves me as we move into April. So absolutely want to hear from you what you think of Crime and Punishment, Count of Monte Cristo, and if you're interested in reading The Death of Trotsky, or if you have and have any thoughts on that. Absolutely want to get into some conversations about this, and would love to dig in a little deeper with those of you who get to watch this. So thanks for listening and watching. I am thankful you're here. I'm still new at this, and I'm finding my way, so I will continue to evolve and get better as we continue to get at this, but I'm excited to jump into that. So please hit that like and subscribe. Check out my previous episodes. I have quite a few in there in the wrap. So my February wrap up, a deep dive into the adventures of Cavalier and Clay, and then most recently King Sorrow. So check those out. Like I said, leave some comments. I'd love to hear from you and what you're reading now, and what you're excited to look forward to as you get into April. So thank you again, and keep on reading.